We did mention that on this halachic topic of going from less candles to more. So first of all, let's just conclude what Chazal concluded. That's that we hold halacha like Bet Hillel. So we go from less to more. Again, basic bare bones of halacha is that you can get away with lighting just one candle. Now, funny scenario, and this involves a bit of halachic erudition. The Gemara explains that we have this mitzvah midrabanan to light the candles of Hanukkah, and we light these candles ideally, as Chazal said, meaning until there is no one left in the marketplace. The obvious explanation, at least the easy, simple pshat explanation, is that you want to perform the what's called persumei nisa, the publicization, the glorification of this miracle. You want to publicize the fact, make it known that you are Jewish, you identify with Jewish culture, Jewish history, and this miracle happened at this time. Back in the day when there was no electricity, people used to leave work at a decent hour. So it's thanks to Sir Isaac Newton that we're all stuck at work until 8, 9, 10 o'clock. But the idea was that everybody was coming home within half an hour of the sunset, so holds the Rambam, and it's during this particular period of time that you have to light the candles. According to the Rambam, this is the only time during which the candles can be lit. You light the candles after half an hour beyond the shqi'ah, you have basically done nothing. According to the Rambam, it's one opinion. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. So according to either time difference or according to the Rambam, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah if you didn't light within half an hour of the shqi'ah. So not to despair, because everyone else scratches their head over this. They read the Gemara differently and they say, wait, maybe ideally you would light the candles in such a way that the maximum number of people would see them. And when's there the heaviest foot traffic? I mean, you're lighting the candles of that coming night, basically right at the transition between the sun setting and the stars coming out. So the Rambam gives you approximately half an hour. Within that half hour, you lit the candles, you're good to go. The Shulchan Aruch mentions, we don't hold this way l'halacha, but ideally, we should. Ideally, we should be careful for this. We should try to do our best to light the candles within that first half hour after the sun sets. So, since this is only one opinion, and not the opinion that we follow, the opinion that we hold, here's a funny scenario. What happens if I work in finance, and the sun sets now at 4:41, 4:42, and I get off work at 2 in the morning. So, how about, someone who works in finance? I know a few. It's the same people I try to call and wake up in the morning for minyan. It's miraculous. So, how about my ability to light the candles and fulfill my obligation, at least according to the Rambam? Ideally, I want to be a good guy. I want everybody to be happy with how I light my Hanukkah candles. So, if I wait until I get home and I light then, it's the middle of the night. So, Baruch Hashem, New York City, half the people are still awake anyway at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I want to light on time, I'm still at work. What do I do? So, really, we hold that the candles should be lit where it is that you're sleeping, where it is that you're praying. We'll talk about this next week as well. Nir ish uveto. What does that mean? That you light one candle. Literally, it reads each man and his house, or each man and his wife. We'll have to investigate that concept a little bit. But we'll assume per household, you would light one candle. So, ideally, if I'm not home but my wife is, or if I'm not home but my husband is, then the ideal scenario, just not to be offensive or insulting to anyone, is that whoever's at home lights on time. I know it's nice to light the candles with the whole family around and take pictures and post them on Instagram, etc., but the mitzvah is ideally performed this way. People ask me about this. I've never actually used it. Yeah, I just see it somewhere. If only you knew. It's a few short floors between us, but man, worlds apart.
Because I thought the women didn't have an obligation to light the candles.
So this is an excellent question. If a woman lives in her own household, so if you're renting an apartment, here's a discussion that's probably...
Yeah,
I meant to talk about
this can my father have me in mind and light the candles for me because it's still my household in LA?
Well, the question is complicated because for you to light the candles, ideally, assuming that you're obligated, would be here within half an hour of the shqi'ah. There, it's too early to light. So if he's lighting fulfilling your obligation, potentially yes, because by the time he lights over there, it's 3 hours ahead over here. So if he lights over there in California at 5 o'clock, 5:15, then he fulfills your obligation here because it's 8:15. But then that would only count if you are considered part of his household. Our discussion is to
as part of my household.
Right.
I think
As part of his household. No, well, halachically speaking, we'll talk about this a little bit more next week. What if you're independent, you have a job and you work and you pay your own rent? So are you technically part of his? Are you technically part of his household? Or are you technically independent?
Okay.
So if my father used to pay my bills. I don't pay them now, but I should. I'm assuming the liability, the responsibility of defraying my own expenses, and that's what makes me what crowns me with this title of a head of household. I have a house I belong to. Sometimes I'm there, and I'm responsible for the mitzvah that take place in the house. Since being married, both my wife and I have this obligation, and we assume women to be just as obligated as men are. It would be more halachically appropriate for my wife to light the candles with the kids for whatever it is in a few weeks. It'll be like 4:30, 4:35, as opposed to waiting until I get home at 1 or 2 in the morning. So what happens to the whole family chinuch situation? Like, you want to teach your kids mitzvah? I'll teach my kids to do mitzvah the ideal way. Here's the time to light the candles. As painful as it is for me not to be there sometimes when the candles are meant to be lit, one thing I can pass on to my kids is do things the right way, the ideal way, and don't compromise too much if you can avoid it.
If no one is home and you know you're gonna light after 4:40, whatever, can you just wait as late until both of them are here, or should the wife do it as soon as possible?
Right. So we hold, halachically speaking, that you have the entire night to light. In other words, when the Gemara says that you can light, we read this as the ideal situation. How long do you have to light the candles? Ideally, you would want to light when people are still walking back and forth. But what if my neighbor right across the street happens to be home, and he'll be up for another 3 or 4 hours? If I light the candles in my window and he sees them, I've publicized the miracle to him. He may or may not know what happened, but we're at least showing each other our candles. So we hold, the Shulchan Aruch holds this way, you have the entire night to light until Arot HaShachar, until the crack of dawn, which is today, the nits this week is like 6:40 change, 6:47, 6:48. So Arot HaShachar will be, let's say, approximately 72 minutes before that. So you're talking about if you came home really late, or if you fell asleep and woke up and didn't realize, you could light the candles until 5:30.
My question is, if my wife comes home at 6 and I come home at 8, should she light at 6 p.m.? Should she light at 6 p.m. or should I say, it's already past Zman, so she should just wait for me?
So for the sake of being halachically consistent, once you miss that half-hour window,
doesn't matter how late
there isn't anything more to gain,
okay,
except potentially for a greater publicization of the miracle. Meaning, if there are more people awake at 6 o'clock than at 8 o'clock, then I'm going to miss all those elementary school kids that otherwise would have been awake and looking into my window from theirs and saying, that guy Ayash, he must be Jewish and he must be thanking Hashem for the miracle that was done back in the day. So lighting the candles at 8 p.m. or at 2 a.m., you can make a pretty serious case that if the purpose of the lighting is to publicize the miracle, not that you didn't fulfill the obligation were you to light later than this, but you probably did more of a mitzvah by lighting earlier because more people are going to see it. So I guess within reasonable limits, light as early as you can if you're waiting for a parent, friend, uncle, aunt, grandparent. So waiting to a certain extent. If already you're not going to make the 4:30, neither one of you is home. So you do what you can. By the way, there is a custom to light the candles in other places too, not just in your home. So in the Beit Knesset, for example, and the minhag is already to make a bracha on this. It wasn't in antiquity, but this became popular by the time of the Shulchan Aruch. If I'm at work, and I want it to be a little risque, as we say in Arabic, I could theoretically light a candle anywhere and fulfill my obligation. One candle, not 8. It's just it's just a nice, cute thing to do, kind of publicize the miracle. So, assuming it doesn't set off the sprinklers or get me fired, if I just light one candle anywhere, okay, I fulfilled the obligation of lighting a candle publicized the miracle. Someone's going to see the candle. What's that candle for? Don't you like your job? And my answer would be, I love my job. I love all the people who work on my floor. And I want them all to know that, God did this amazing, pulled off this miraculous victory for the Jews, time of the Greek Empire, 2,000 plus years ago. So if you can do it, great. Doesn't have to be a whole elaborate candelabra of 8 candles. As we said before, in theory, you fulfilled your obligation with one. So the mitzvah becomes much more mobile. You can basically perform it anywhere. You just light a candle, stick it somewhere, and you'll have fulfilled the obligation, publicize the miracle. People would have no choice but to assume you're doing it for this. By the way, since everybody was lighting candles back in the day, probably makes sense that the reason they would light the candles in the window is specifically for this purpose, right? They didn't have lights in their lawn or in the garden. So if you're lighting a candle for your own personal use in your home, you'd probably light it in the middle of the room, and this way you had pretty much equal light everywhere.
Are we not allowed to benefit from the light?
Correct. So you light it in the window, both to publicize the miracles. Everybody should see that. So well, how come every house has a candle in it? What's so special about mine? What's special about it is that mine's in the window. Another halachic detail is that we ideally try to light within 10 tefachim of the floor. So it's low. Generally speaking, if you've ever seen houses of antiquity, if they had a room to put candles or torches basically, but they would hang them kind of high in the ceiling, keep them out of the way. They wouldn't get knocked into, or they wouldn't burn things, hair, clothing, etc. So if you light a candle, it's low and it's next to the window. It kind of implies this is the only reason I could be lighting such a thing would be to publicize the miracle. It's less likely that I'm using it for my own purposes, because if I were, I wouldn't put it there specifically.
What if you know all of the different stuff? Like, you're on the 10th floor facing a brick wall, or you're so high up, no one's going to see your window anyway.
No windows in the brick wall, no neighbors on the other side.
No,
right, hypothetically.
Not everyone's facing people, so let's say...
So we seem to have customarily adopted an Ashkenazi leniency when it comes to Hanukkah, and this is very interesting. It used to be the candles were not actually lit in the window, they were actually lit outside the house. In Yerushalayim, right.
Doorway here, no?
Yeah, so they would light them.
In your hallway, you could do it in your doorway. No?
It's to be surrounded.
You get shot, but you can try to light fires in the doorway. Now, it used to be they would light the candles outside of the house, outside of the entrance to the house. In Yerushalayim, you'll find many places they still do this. They sell these little aquariums that you can put a candle in and light them outside. It's very always got windy. It always blew out anyway. It would smear olive oil everywhere. It was a danger, really, to light things on fire. But that's the custom of antiquity. It was only since the Crusades, terrible persecution at the hands of the Christians in Europe. Since then, have devoted their lives to peace, which is fascinating. We'll talk about this sometime. The United Nations, they're the most peaceful, peace-loving people on the face of the planet. Never works out in our favor, though. So, once there was tremendous persecution in Europe, the Rama writes that for the purpose of pikuach nefesh, and people see candles lit outside, they figure, oh, you're Jewish, let's kill you. So they brought the candles indoors. And since then, the explanation was, it's not that you can light the candles indoors. I would say, fine, I'm not publicizing the mitzvah to anybody, I'm not publicizing the miracle to anybody, so light it without a bracha. If it counts, it counts. It doesn't count, instead it may waste a bracha. So their response was, no, you bring the candles indoors, and you can make a bracha. Why? Because you're publicizing the miracle to yourself. Because you are Jewish too, and you count, if you picked up on the first half of the shiur. Your accomplishments today are tremendous. You are a spiritual superstar. If you're lighting Hanukkah candles today, you should know it's an absolute miracle. Just the fact that you keep this tradition going. So, if husband and wife or two roommates light candles in the apartment, you're basically publicizing the mitzvah to each other. We have a funny halakhah like this when it comes to tzedakah. The Gemara says, "Afilu ani sheba'aniyim." The poorest of the poorest will have to give tzedakah. But I have no money. How do I give tzedakah? Literally, I have not even a coin in my pocket. So if I happen to raise a penny, and I find someone else who doesn't have anything but a penny, I give him my penny, he gives me his. Okay, I gave to someone. the buck didn't stop here. There's this process of flowing and giving and loving and helping. And okay, so we helped each other, but we did something. We accomplished something. So I'm going to publicize the mitzvah to you if that's okay with you. You're going to publicize it to me, and we can be friends. If you're able to do it in the window or at the entrance to your door, it would be better. That's really the original custom. I don't know if it's anti-Semitism in New York, but the fire department's a little bit concerned about things like this. So at your own discretion. I suggest, if you can, that you light either in the window or outside of your door if people walk past it and could see. But has a little bit of that Purim manishtana quality to it. Like, what are these candles for? Oh, just so you know, there was a miracle that was done, etc. But I think in New York City, the Goyim, the mayor, lights candles too. So, well, he's Jewish. I guess he should.
Just thinking about the extenuating circumstances. Let's say you're in the middle of nowhere and you forgot to buy candles. Isn't there a concept on Pesach that we can actually use a flashlight in replacement for a candle to look for chametz? Can we use the same for Hanukkah?
Yeah, so this is going to depend on how we hold by electricity and whether or not it's actually fire. I remember someone once pointed out that a lot of the less observant households in America find these little electric Hanukkah, which really aren't worth all that much. I mean, it's cute. It shows people what day of Hanukkah it is. But the original, the miracle was done with olive oil, so we light, ideally with olive oil, so that's how the miracle was done. If you light wax or other things that are combustible, still fulfilled the mitzvah, you fulfilled the obligation. Using electricity instead of fire implies electricity is fire. We spoke about this a little bit over the spring or early summer.
Shabbat.
Right, electricity on Shabbat. So not so clear that electricity should be asur on Shabbat. Even midrabanan, the custom is not to do it, so nobody leaves and says, rabbis reform. The custom is not to use electricity on Shabbat. The Torah doesn't say that you can't, so I won't say that it's biblical. Hard to say it's rabbinic because the rabbis didn't know about it either, but let's assume that there's such a correlation. So we don't hold this correlation to be perfect. This is the proof. If someone were to tell you you should light your Hanukkah candles with electricity, so our answer would typically be not so simple that this actually counts. Although Rabbi Yosef does hold that it's useful on Shabbat. Familiar with this? If you don't have candles for Shabbat that you can use the lights. As a matter of fact, Soloveitchik of Moshe Feinstein held, or Rabbi Yosef held as well, that you should turn off the lights before you light candles on Shabbat. The whole purpose of the candles on Shabbat is that you should have light in the house. Today we have electric lights, so we're still lighting candles. Then you should turn the lights off and then light your candles, especially for Sephardiot. We don't accept the Shabbat when we light the candles. You can state afterwards that now you accept the Shabbat, but you can light the candles, still do melacha until you verbally announce that you're accepting the Shabbat. So we do hold that electricity helps where we need light. So lighting Shabbat candles, if I don't have fire, I don't have candles to light, Rav Ovadia holds, like it seems Rav Moshe did, that you could make a bracha on the electric lights. If you're in a hotel on Shabbat, you can't burn anything. Right, so you can turn off the lights, you can make a bracha and turn them back on, and you will have fulfilled the obligation of lighting candles on Shabbat, understood as having light and not tripping over things. In the case of Hanukkah, it's not so much the light we're interested in as it is the ignition, the combustion of something that resembles the olive oil that was burnt in Beit HaMikdash, which is a little bit different. On Pesach, it's more a function of being able to see. So again, does electricity count as light? Well, if you can see things with its help, then probably not a big deal. Those who hold it's even ideal and probably better than candles.
Specifically the combustion.
Right, yeah. It's a whole discussion. The Maharami Prague writes against using wax candles. He says that the miracle was done with oil. He said the oil symbolizes a lot of things, but it's the fact that it's liquid, that it's drawn towards the wick, that there's the whole setup of a cup with oil and then the wick. There's a whole bunch of symbolisms to it. And not Kabbalistically, it's halakhically, you should try to use oil.
So you know how we have to stay half hour with the candles? Okay, what did he... Okay, let's say we have to go somewhere and you light the candle. Can you leave or do you have to stay half hour?
No, you can light them for half an hour and then extinguish them. That's mutar. If you need to light and take off, then you leave enough oil in there that at least one of them should burn.
So you don't have to be with the candles for half hour?
No. You light them. Really, again, only one of them has to have enough oil to last 30 minutes. If you do all 5, 6, 7, 8, then that's fantastic. But it's enough that only one of them lasts for at least 30 minutes, and you're already in good shoes, in good shape. Yafeh, chazak. Anybody else have any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Can you beat your own Truth yourself if all else fails?
If you were the only Jew anywhere, living in a village or in Yosemite National Park, so theoretically you'd be lighting the candles Avraham Avinu style. anyone who happens to come by and see them, or who would like to take a look at my candles, here's what it is that I'm doing. You don't have to get a minyan together or text your neighbors like, hey, by the way, I'm lighting candles. Check this out. They come, they see. They don't come, they don't see. It's okay, but it's not. We don't. There's no such thing as a halachic exemption for someone who lives in the middle of nowhere and doesn't have too many people crossing or passing in front of the house. Another interesting question, by the way, is: are we publicizing the mitzvah to Jews or to Goyim? De facto, both, because you're lighting candles, you're not hiding them from anybody. But is the idea that we're...
But if you were in Me'asherim, would you still be required?
That's it. If you live in a neighborhood where there are only Jews and everybody knows there is such a thing as the mitzvah, we hold that you're fulfilling the obligation by publicizing it to anybody, or like reminding anyone of it. Put it that way. It's more maybe reminding someone than it is anything else. You live in a neighborhood that's all Goyim, you publicize the mitzvah, you at least show them that you're doing something differently. Whether or not they appreciate why is something else. But it's a good question. It's like, do the Kohanim do Birkat Kohanim when there's nobody but Kohanim in the Beit Knesset?
Yes.
So they all get up, they all stand there, and they bless no one, the walls. The answer is yes, they're blessing in general, they have Am Yisrael in general in mind. They have a mitzvah to do this, even if they're not blessing anyone else but themselves or each other. That's their job.
Is there a concept of, I think you mentioned this, but like if there was fear of goyim, would you be allowed to light it but in a hidden manner?
Yeah, you would light inside the house, on your table or something else. The Ramah writes about this specifically. Nowadays, there's so much anti-Semitism and we're constantly under attack. The custom is to light the candles inside. So how do I fulfill the mitzvah on personal meetings? I'm publicizing it to myself, my wife, my kids.
Don't we read in B'Moedekin that you can blow out the candle lights if for fear of goyim?
That's pikuach nefesh.
So if
there's a non-Jewish army that invaded my town,
in the 30 minutes, then if there was fear from goyim, you would be able to blow them out.
On Shabbat, that you're allowed to blow out candles for fear the goyim might attack you. That's if you ended up in a situation where a non-Jewish army invaded.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing.
There's a murderer. There's someone out on this, so you don't want to.
If that's the case with Shabbat, all the more so it would be the case with Shabbat.
You can violate Shabbat. Pikuach nefesh. You could violate. Yes. If there's a psychopath on the loose and the police catch him, then you light the candles again. That's all. As long as it's night. Very good. We got something. We'll see you next week.